how Burns is related to all these Hornbys and Whaleys and Parkmans and so forth in the mountains. Well, my mother was married to Helen Hornby, and my grandparents, you know, I grew up, my sister's out here in Gatlinburg with me too, and we just sort of grew up thinking everybody knew their family history and, you know, their lineage. I just thought it was normal for everyone. I couldn't find out it's not for a lot of people. And so we got a rich heritage that I never even understood. But this is my grandfather, Carl Hornby. This is my grandmother, Iota Harden. Has anybody ever heard of someone named Iota?
What?
Iota. Iota Harden. Not sure where that came from, okay? But this is my mother here. And then this is her brothers, James Carl, they call him JC. These are pictures from the 40s when they were in the military. And Hayes, and then Uncle Jack. And this is Uncle Jack here with my grandfather up in Greenbrier. But my heritage came through my grandfather, who researched so much of his family lineage after he retired when he was age 72. And every time I would go visit him, he would just rehearse all of that with me because he was researching it, typing it up, and he wrote his memoirs, a few books. He was good friends with Charles Husky. I'll show a slide here in a moment if you're familiar with Charles. He had a super library in his home. And so when he passed away, he passed it all to my uncle. When he passed away, he gave it to me with kind of the commission I've got to carry it on, right? Well, I've got more going for me in today's world with a computer, knowing how to operate a PC, so I digitized all the photos where I could do a slideshow with it. So all of this research of what I'll be talking about today is really theirs. And hopefully you'll enjoy from a family point of view. It's one thing to tell the communities, to tell the clans, but if you don't have a little bit of a storyline behind it, it's kind of dry. So hopefully we can make it interesting for you. My grandparents, even though we're going to talk about White Oak Flats, which is Gatlinburg, Greenbrier, if I can get to the Sugarlands, we'll talk about the Sugarlands, but we'll start out with Elkmont, which was a logging town. Most everyone is familiar with it. A lot of people think where the cabins are above this logging town, where the Appalachian Club is, they think that was Elkmont. That was really a string town. And it was for summer homes for people who bought property from Mr. Townsend and the railroad. Elkmont, the logging town, was the campground today, present day campground. Now, my neighbor's not going to show up for you, but I'm going to point over here and I'll try to run over there. But back here in the back, that's the machine shop. This is where my grandparents lived after they got married. Beside him were my grandfather's parents. So let me point over here for you. Machine shop's back in the background. My grandfather's parents and then my grandparents. So this little town is in that, when you first go into the campground, it's just the first little circle you make. My granddad started working for Little River Railroad in the machine shop when he was 15 years old. And he worked there until he was 21. And he went over, when they dismantled Elkmont, the machine shop, he went to Tremont and set up the machine shop there. And that's the next area that they logged out. And so and this pointer, this mouse at the same time, I don't think it's going to work. I'm going to lay this down. I can't do both. Okay, so my grandparents, this is their courting days when they met in Elkmont. My grandfather, he got a little money in his pocket, he bought him a car, okay? And so they're what we call courting, right? So here they are sitting on the bumper, on the edge of the car. Well, this is the little brother chaperone. You know why? It's reflecting off the TV. So okay, so you don't have to live with it, all right? Here it is. It's reflecting. So they that's where they got married. My grandmother's parents lived just across from the Appalachian Club depot. So in the old days, you used to have a boardwalk that would go over to the Appalachian Club when you got off the train. Their homes had across the tracks from them. We've got pictures of all the little partner children playing on the railroad depot because nobody was around at the time. And then this is William Parton. He was my grandmother's father. He got a job with Lew River Railroad. He would go up into the lumber camps above Elkmont, and Rough Creek, Fish Camp, some of those areas. And he was the one that made the shoes for the mules they used to drag the logs down to the train. He repaired a lot of their heavy-duty tools that they used. And that was his start with the railroad. Well, a little bit of my tie to all of this. My grandparents here, this is right in front of Appalachian Club. My grandmother's mother was a Whaley. Her name was Lew Bolton. My grandfather's his mother was a Whaley. Her name was Emma Whaley. Their dads were brothers, so they were first cousins. And Robert Columbus was my grandfather's dad, and then this is William Whaley once again. To show you sort of the tie with the Whaley tie-in, this is Joel Whaley, this is Pinky Whaley, and they were the fathers of the two Whaley grandmothers of my grandfather. So if we look at this one, how many of you have heard of Bullhead John Whaley? Does that ring a bell? We got a few, and I know you know about it. So Bullhead John Whaley, he was just first known in Greenbrier as John Henry. John Henry Whaley. Didn't have the name Bullhead yet. This is his son Pygmy, his son Joel, and then this couple are the parents of Emma. This couple is the parents of Levisha. And this is my grandparents. So as you can see, my grandparents' mothers were first cousins. They had the same great-grandfather. And I told this last time when we did this talk, most people's family tree, forks, mine's a stick, right? Because we just joined right back to the same person, which was quite common in the Smokies. There weren't that many families up there at that time. So let's talk a little bit about the communities. In the Smokies, you've probably heard we talked about Elmont. Gatlinburg, which is the resort town just at the foothills of the park, it used to be called White Oak Flats. We'll start there, and then we'll work our way over to Greenbrier Cove and try to come back to the Sugarlands if we have time. So the early settlers in White Oak Flats, a gentleman by the name of William Ogle came over, discovered a place he would love to move his family, cut trees, made a clearing, hewed the logs, and then he went back to Edgefield, South Carolina to grow a crop and to get his family and all his gear, move them back to this area in the Smokies. Well, he caught a fever that was going around, and he didn't make it. He died in South Carolina. So his widow, Martha Jane Husky Ogle, she got with her brother Peter and her nephew Isaac, we call him Old Isaac Husky. And then she had a daughter who was married to James McCarter. So she was already married at the time, and then of course she had a younger daughter, Mary Ann. So a lot of people kind of challenge these photos, but the reason they're not authentic is because, or they don't think they're authentic, is because they didn't have photography in 1830, right? But what they don't realize is these are just photographs of portraits. These are family portraits. So if you look closely, you can see they're not good and clear. There's Isaac, Old Isaac Husky. So they're actually portraits and not photographs, okay? So you see, kind of pay attention here to, this is Rebecca, this is Mary Ann. Let me point over here for you guys. Rebecca and Mary Ann, they're the daughters of the Ogles. And they eventually will marry the Whaley brothers that came in. But Mary Ann was first married, Rebecca was first married to James McCarter. He died at age 33, a young man. I don't really know what happened to him, but the Whaley brother that married him, he married the widow McCarter. So with this photo, I've kind of created this more or less to get them all in the same picture. But all these gentlemen here are the grandsons of Martha Jane Ogle through her daughters who married Whaleys. So Aaron is on your far left here, that's Aaron Whaley. Middleton and Rebecca only had one son, Aaron. Mary Ann married William M. Whaley. These two brothers were the first two to come in. Whaley's from through the Dry Sluice Gap and came down into the Greenbrier area. They had 9 sons. 7 of them are pictured here. You got John Henry. This is Perry. Isaac, Ira. This is the Reverend George Bradford Whaley, Elijah the youngest, and then Preston. The oldest two Whaley boys didn't stay in the Smokies. They moved away, Alexander and William Jr. So from all of the Whaleys that basically came into the Smokies, grew up in a settlement community of Greenbrier, they come from all of these guys. So the story went that if you found out you were a Whaley, well, are you from the new Whaley or the old Whaley? Because William was the uncle of Aaron the nephew, so Aaron ended up having, I think it was 5 or 7 sons. He had quite a few boys himself. So we need to get a Reagan clan in the picture a little bit. The Reagans were also first settlers in White Flats. And you'll see in the previous picture, all those Whaley sons, they would marry, a lot of them ended up marrying some of the old daughters. And then the old sons ended up marrying some of the Reagan daughters. So a lot of the intermarrying of first people in the community started on the family tree here for Noah, or just Noah, excuse me. And then Ephraim, his son, they ran a store in White Oak Flats. The reason I've got this slide up here, I think it was Daniel W. Richard is the first one in the White Oak Flats. Daniel W. ran a store out of his home. And then when Noah and his daughter Sophie Reagan got married, they actually built a storehouse, moved the store into a physical building of its own, and started the first store in Gatlinburg, or White Oak Flats, as it was known today. So this is the old cabin. It's still in Gatlinburg today, sitting right at the edge of, when you pass Anakista's parking lot, when you go down and you turn east on 321 to Cosby, it's sitting in Gatlinburg still. This is a grave marker for Daniel W. Reagan. His dad, Richard, was the first one to come in and get a farm. And Daniel went in and got much more land. And then we've got Richard Reason Reagan, Daniel's son, who was the first postmaster in Gatlinburg. So if y'all were here last year, you're hearing a repeat, so I hope you're like me and you don't really have a good memory, so y'all listen to me, enjoyable to me. But this is one of the early photos of Gatlinburg. This is Squire Mabel's home. He ran a store out of his home as well. The cabin sits right in here today as you turn off to 321. This is another old store that used to be Mr. Gatlin that was in the area that Gatlinburg is named after. He sold out to Calvin Oval. He ran the store later. And you can see back there the church and the local store. We'll get a little bit closer view of that. So Daniel just telling you the story. Daniel W., he owned quite a bit of land in Gatlinburg and a lot of timberland above. So Timothy Reagan was a Revolutionary War soldier. He comes in as far as Sevierville, and he becomes the first blacksmith in Sevierville. They said, family history says that he made the iron bars and shackles and stuff for the jail in Sevierville. Later on in life, he's a widower, and in his latter years, he goes into the Gatlinburg, White Oak Flats area and lives with his son, Richard Reagan. He dies, and they say that somewhere in that White Oak Flats cemetery, one of the corners, they think his grave is there. I don't know if anybody's ever truly identified it, but there is a marker for the Reagans that they just put up in the White Oak Flats cemetery. If you go into Gatlinburg, if y'all know where the village is, it's got the concrete sidewalks that you can walk all the way up through the hillside. If you just keep going to the very top, you walk up the hill, and there's that cemetery. It's got all your ancestors of the founders of White Oak Flats. You got Martha Jane, I think's there. Martha Jane Ogle, Thomas Ogle, her brother. You got Isaac Ogle, what we call Old Isaac Husky. There's so many Isaac Huskies, you have to kind of differentiate. And then Bullhead Whaley's there as well. So, a little bit of a story. Richard Reagan buries his dad, he's got his farm, and there's a storm comes through while he's out getting his cattle in, and the tree limb falls out of the tree and pretty much crushes his skull and kills him. So he's buried again in the cemetery. So Daniel W., his son, decides just to give his plot of land there, donate it to White Oak Flats, and that became the first cemetery. So that's how we got White Oak Flats Cemetery from Daniel W. Now, this is a view. I didn't have this slide available to me last year. I came across this from the Reagans. But this is Gatlinburg, as you would know, the main drag today, and it was the Reagan farm. And let me just flash through a few of them. If you look at the background, this is the Mount LeConte, Bullhead Mountain. All of that today is just a busy district of Gatlinburg. So let's take another view, a little bit different view. If you look at the stone walls that are built around the pastures, this is the Reagan home. There's the mountains in the background. Way over here is where Airport Road goes up towards Mount LeConte. So it's kind of interesting to see what Gatlinburg was just farmland. And Daniel W. owned most of this land that we're seeing in the picture. This is a little bit more up into the 1920s there. This is River Road coming in through. That's the river there. River Road, you come up and it will merge. And the main drag you go down to Gatlinburg today is up here. It comes down and it merges at Baskin Creek. If you look at some of the old land deeds, Baskin's Creek was actually first called Bearskins Creek. That's where they got the Baskins from. And this hill right here is where that cemetery is, and the village sits right in that area. Now, here's a look at it today. Pretty much the same thing. Got a little busy over time, but not. This is a picture even from the 1970s. But for those of you who are trying to watch me over here, I'll try to use my pointer. This is the main drag coming down. This is River Road coming up, and that's that main red light where the Cherokee Orchard Trail comes down to Baskins Creek. For those of you who know the area. So let's step back again. This is the Baptist Church, Baskins Creek with the footbridge across it. The old store, when they finally put it into a store, and then this is when Noah Ogle built the store. As we move across, you'll see the main road that we have today. It was just a ford of the creek, back in the old days. And so here sits the old store, and then across this road is the Baptist Church. It's not across the creek as much as it is across the road that ran through. So this building here was built later. This is a picture of Noah Ogle. It was built to serve as a place for the early school. The first school, it's called Baskins Creek School. It was located in a log cabin. They just had a log cabin. Later they put in this little boarded building, and then they also used it for the first church. Ephraim Ogle, he's the son of Noah. He takes over the store. The Ogle store actually goes through 4 generations. It goes through Noah, who started it, he and his wife. Then Ephraim took it next. Then Charles, and then Charles Jr. So it goes through 4 generations of the Ogle store. This is his home on the river. Here's his neighbor down the river, Charles Reagan. Charles Reagan was a blacksmith up in the area of Gatlinburg. He's the grandson, son of Daniel, the grandson of Richard, I think, if I've got that right. I don't want to leave out our McCarters. We mentioned the McCarters came in originally with the Ogle family, and James McCarter was married to Rebecca at the time, Rebecca Ogle. James gets killed, I'm not sure if killed or died at age 33. But this is Mac McCarter. He's a descendant, several generations down, but he ran a basket shop. They made brooms, baskets, chairs. And if you're going down the Glades, not the Glades, but the Parkway, instead of cutting off to go to 321 to Cosby, if you're going down into Pigeon Forge, he had a basket shop down there on the left. Another gentleman that came in, Andy Huff. He's the brother to Jack Huff, who built the cabins up at LeConte Lodge. And Andy and Jack, Ed was telling me at Fleming that they used to live up on False Gap out of Greenbrier. I didn't even know that until Ed shared it with me. That's where they came in from. He came in 1897. He built this hotel to the right. You see Andy up there. He built the hotel to the right. He had like 7 sawmills. And to house all these lumber workers, he built a hotel. Well, as Gatlinburg developed and things began to grow, tourists came in, that little hotel for the lumber workers grew into a 225-room hotel later on called the Skyview Motel, and it's, or Mountain View Hotel, excuse me, Mountain View, and it's set right there when you first turn off 321, kind of back to the right a little bit. My wife and I got to actually stay in there one time before they tore it down. you could stand at the edge of the room and toward the walls, the floor just slanted toward the outside walls. It's kind of interesting to stay there. Okay, here's another look at Baskins Creek area. The creek's not in this photo, but in this photo to your right is River Road coming up, and then we've got the main drag coming between the Baptist church on the left, and then that's the old store that's on the right in the photo. And then just right down in front of that is the traffic light that everybody has today right there at Baskins Creek where Cherokee Orchard Road comes down. Here it is a little later paved, and now we've got to replace the old store of the Mountain Mall, which is still there today on the right. And then you can see the edge and the banner board for the church on the left. They later moved the Baptist church out 321 about a mile on the left. It's a little bit out of town now. So overhead aerial view, you can see a little bit better. Most of you guys are used to coming down from the park, the main drag, and then you come to that main red light where Baskins Creek comes in, and here's the River Road coming up. I don't know how well y'all can see it over here, but this is River Road coming up with the hotels on either side, and then there's the main drag as it comes to the red light, headed toward Pigeon Forge from the park. So now let's leave White Oak Flats, go past where Dudley Creek parallels you on 321, past the Glades and Old Cartertown, and we'll go back where you can go into the park on the middle prong of Little Pigeon River into an area called Greenbrier Cove. This is where my grandfather was born. This is him, Carlin Ormby to the right, and then his parents, Robert Columbus Ormby and Emma Whaley. The cemetery, just like the old White Oaks Flat Cemetery, the old cemetery in the Greenbrier is called the Plymouth Cemetery. A lot of the old patriarchs or the matriarchs are buried there. I've got a picture of the headstone for William M. Whaley, Mary Ann Whaley, and John Ormby Jr. He was the first Ormby to come into the Greenbrier and Smoky Mountain area. A few years later, his nephew, John Ormby, also came in, and he's the one that married Mary Coon, if you've ever heard of the name Mary Coon. And so a lot of folks are descended from that side. I come from John Jr. So Aaron is John Jr.'s son. He looks like a pilgrim. Here's the reason he's dressed up in that outfit. He was the justice of the peace up in the Greenbrier area. And then Bullhead Whaley to your right, they were brothers-in-law. When the Ormby's came in, John Jr., he had Aaron, Amos, John Humphrey Ormby, and for some reason everybody just kind of nicknamed him Humpy John Ormby. He wasn't humpback or anything, they just called him Humpy John Ormby because his name was Humphrey. And then he had two daughters, Morning Ormby and Peggy Ormby. There's probably some other children, but these are the ones I know about. And Bullhead, or John Henry Whaley, he married Morning Ormby, Aaron's sister, and then one of the other ones, Harkless Teal, well, he married Peggy Ormby, and they lived over in the upper part of Sugarlands. If you used to go up in the Rainbow Falls area, up in that trailhead, that's kind of their area. So here's that picture one again with Martha Jane and all of her grandsons from the Whaleys. That's kind of threw that one in there because we're in Greenbrier now. So the Whaleys of Greenbrier pretty much all came from all of these guys that you see pictured. And I've just found out recently, I was always wondering where Aaron Whaley, not Aaron Ormby, where Aaron Whaley is. And Ed Fleming, he was sharing some with me about that, so I appreciate his input. He was more down in the Glades area and Emmerick's Cove on the lower end of Greenbrier. He eventually did move up in the Greenbrier area with a couple of his sons, Middleton too. He actually built the Baptist church up there. So here we have Aaron Ormby at the top, Aaron Whaley below. We've got a lot of Aarons here, okay? Their two children, seen to the right of Aaron Ormby at the top. Aaron Ormby's daughter marries Aaron Whaley's son. The reason I've got those two pictured there is they both were midwives in the Greenbrier area. You don't usually hear of a man being a midwife, but John Dudley was his name. He was a midwife as well as his wife. And a lot of the ladies up in Greenbrier were trained by the doctor that would come up in there to be midwives. You go through the midwifing class, I guess is how you say that. And so to the right is, again, Sarah Ormby, which is Aaron's wife. She was a daughter of Granny Coon and John Ormby. And here she is with 5 of her sons. Middleton too is not pictured here. Now, something interesting about John Whaley, you had, as the Orbeez came in, most of the lower part where the ground was a little bit more level was already occupied, so when the Orbeez came in, they had the upper Porter's Creek area. Her dad was the first Bracken to come into the Smokies. His name was Andrew Jackson Bracken. He brought his family in to really try to avoid the Civil War. He didn't want to get his family involved in the conflict. And so while Pinckney was growing up in the Sugarlands area, and Julia Bracken was growing up over there as well, that's when they met and married, had most of their children, and then they came back when they were able to purchase this land. So let's talk about Phoebe just a moment. So here's Phoebe later on in life with all of her children. And this is her oldest son or second son, but he had a cabin above Phoebe and Mac. There was Phoebe and James, and his name was Mac Whaley. And some people, old timers, know the story of a spring that ran up there. They call it, some people call it the Fittified Spring, some people call called it the Spasmodic Spring. But this spring was a bold spring when Mac first moved up there. It's the furthest cabin up as far as I know, up in the Indian Nation. But it was raining good and strong, you know, built a house there, built a cabin. And then one day he was wanting to water his cattle, and there was no water coming down from the spring. He had a little trough that he worked down where the cattle could feed. And so he's kind of fussing at his wife, you know, what's happening with the water here? And she says, well, it's not running. He couldn't believe it. He goes up there. When he gets up there, by the time he gets up there, the water's running again. Well, there had been an earthquake that year. And after the earthquake, that spring, the reason they called it spasmodic, it would run for 15 minutes, and then it wouldn't run for 15 minutes. I think that's right, that's what they were thinking. And so it's almost like clockwork. You could set your clock by it. It would run, and then it would stop. And people used to come from all over just to watch that spring. It was like, wow, the first wonder in the world here. And so the old cow, it just kind of knew the timing of the spring. It'd go up there to the spring. It'd just wait, because it knew sooner or later that thing was going to kick on and give us some water. So they had a cow train with it too. The other daughter, Sally, she's next to get married. And she married a gentleman by the name of William McKinley Whalen. Now, most people know William McKinley as Vanderbilt Whalen. Well, you got so many Williams, you got so many Johns, everybody gets tagged their name. You had Speckled Bill Whaley, Whitehead Bill Whaley. I mean, you just had to have a designation so they know which Whaley you're talking about. Because if you said William, remember William M was the first one to come over. 10 times out of 9, somebody's going to be named William, right? So Vanderbilt was quite an industrious person. He went over and worked in some of the mines in upper East Tennessee, made some money. Then he went over also into kind of telecom planes up the Copper Hill area when they were putting telephone lines in. So he even worked for the phone company over there, hanging the old open wire. So when he come back, he had a little money in his pocket. And people thought, man, you went up there and got rich. You just like the Vanderbilts, right? So they started having Vanderbilt Whaley after the Vanderbilts were there. He moves from that area next to Phoebe and ends up buying the old Joel Whaley place. Remember, I told you that Joel buys land, Pinckney buys land, 500 acres each. Well, Joel, Pinckney built a home where his dad had his cabin burned. Joel moves into Humpy John's old cabin. It's still there in very good shape. And he lived there, and when he passed away, he left it to his son, and his son sold it to Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt really built a place. He had a sawmill. He used sawmill lumber to build him a nice house. That's what he and Sally are sitting in front of here in the seated position. That's Vanderbilt with Sally sitting in front of the house. But look how he's decked out here in this picture when he's younger. He's really dressed to the teeth. His father was the Reverend George Bradford Whalen. George Bradford was the pastor of the Primitive Baptist Church in the Greenbrier area. And this photo here with the quilt in the background, that's the old cabin they built. That's where they were living at the time when most of it, these were the first 7 children Sally had up in when they lived in Indian Nation over across from Phoebe. I've got a picture of Doc's Motel here, and the reason I do is if you look at this little girl right here in the middle, her name is Maureen Whaley. Pointer work, that's her right there. She's the one that built and started Doc's Motel, which is still there in Townsend. And her granddaughter, Sharon Stinnett, still runs that hotel today, so we're still 3rd generation. A nice place. She's got some, I think she's the only one that's got cabins you can rent right on the river, you know, part of the motel up there.
What hotel?
Pardon?
What hotel is it?
Doc's, D-O-C-K-S. It's in Townsend.
T-O-C-K-S?
Townsend, Tennessee.
Dock of the Bay.
Just past the traffic light.
Yeah, just past the traffic light. If you're coming into Townsend from there, the traffic light, you take a left to go 321, just go through the traffic light. She's on the left with the park. Very good place. Yes. So here we have a picture. The reason I got this photo up here, the Whaleys brought a singing style in the Greenbrier called old harp singing. The Whaleys still had their reunion. Me and my sister attended it this past summer. And they didn't have pianos and organs up there in Greenbrier in those days, so they sang a cappella. Everybody had their parts. So if you used to sing, you know, church music, you had an alto, a bass, a soprano, and a tenor, right? So you had your parts, and they would all harmonize, and it's real pretty singing. But the lead, he'll just start out with this kind of a chant singing your part for you, and he'll make a round with all the sopranos singing, and then he'll go back and sing the tenor's part, and all of them will join in, and then he'll go back and he'll sing the alto's part, and all of them come in. Pretty soon you have them all singing in harmony a cappella. So it's kind of neat. You can go back and hear that singing. They do it every year at the Whaley reunion. But half the gentlemen in this photo are Whaleys, and they used to teach that there. Now, my grandfather again, in this photo, this is the map picture of Greenbrier Cove. And most of the hikers that go back in there today, they use this map because it's laid out so well they can go find the old home places and the remains and know where things were. The photo to the right of it is the store that his father built with Davis Martin, and on the hill above it is the Friendship Baptist Church. I'm going to show you a slide next, and this picture was taken from the front of the schoolhouse looking up to the hill, looking across Porter's Creek. This is the store with Robert Columbus, my grandfather's dad, on the left. That's his dad, father on the left. And then his brother-in-law was Davis Martin on the right. They got the post office put in their store, and Davis Martin was the mail carrier for there. He delivered mail on horseback. They said that Davis had his horse trained so well that sometimes he'd just kind of go to sleep on the route riding, and the horse would never stop whenever he came to home and he was delivering mail, and he'd wake up Davis and then get off and deliver his mail. Kind of laid back in those days. So here's Greenbrier, and we'll point over here. That's the schoolhouse that they were standing at. There's the top of the store. This picture's made looking from the church down. Okay, now we're on the hill where the church was, and I'm looking at back at the school. To the left of it is Joe Whaley's store, and then he's got a little bitty hen house right there, and then he's got a grist mill right there on the river. So, Greenbrier Cove. This is about the only picture I know that really shows sort of the whole cove. But what I'm going to show you next, well, I got a little baptizing that we do. This is where they forded the river, where they would have the churches baptizing. But here I've cropped in the LaCotte, the Hotel LaCotte in the bottom right-hand corner, into that same photo. See that schoolhouse above and the doorway and the two windows? If you look down in the bottom floor of that hotel, you'll see that that school is the door in the windows. They put a second floor on it and made the LaCotte Hotel. So what they did, Kinsey Whaley and his uncle Wes Whaley, who had a sawmill, they bought the school, turned it into a hotel. That used to be the only way you could go in and hike in Mount LaCotte at the time, back in that day. And so you could literally stay in the hotel for, I think, $1.75 a day, and if you want to pay a whole dime, you could get a meal too. So they built that little kitchen annex over to the left. There's an old car that sits, I don't know if you can tell, there's a car sitting in front of that annex from T-Model Ford. They would use it. People would either come into Sevierville on the train, or people living in Sevierville, but they could pick them up in that car and bring them up to the Hotel LaCotte, and then they had horses. They could ride horseback up into Mount LaCotte.
Was that a picture of Cass Walker, the grocer, being baptized?
Yes.
Wow.
And also the White Cap, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yes.
I didn't go into that, just don't have time, okay? But there's a book on the White Caps. You can read all about that guy that got baptized. It's another story, but if you can find the book on the White Caps, it's very, very interesting read. One of our kinfolk, Laura Whaley, was killed by those guys. So I've got now we've got a wooden bridge going across Porter's Creek. There's the hotel. If you go across on the modern-day stone bridge and just pull into a little parking area there's an iron gate that you can just kind of pull up to. And that's the beginning of the trail that will take you back to the Plemons Cemetery. Remember, we talked about a lot of patriarchs who had buried in that cemetery. Well, I cropped in. I didn't do a good job, but I cropped in the schoolhouse that was built later. And if you walk back from your parking at, you're just right in front of where that hotel was, literally right in front of it. If you walk a little ways and go up the hill, you can see those columns. See those columns sticking up to that schoolhouse? They're still standing there today. Those columns.
Is that the Ramsey Cascade?
No.
No, it's not.
That's it.
Well, no, that is the Ramsey Cascade Road. When you cross that bridge, you have to go a long ways to go right there.
Yeah. So are the columns from the hotel?
No.
Columns are from the school. If you're a big Facebook follower and watch all the hikers, they get that confused. They'll have you believe it's the hotel. It's not, it's the school. From the school. Clinton Cemetery is a good hike. It's not far back there. It's a beautiful cemetery. So I just threw in Here's going to Ramsey Cascade, but you got to go quite a ways to get to it. And in the Primitive Baptist Church, when you turn up the trail, you're literally going between the columns of where the Primitive Baptist Church used to sit. The old remains kind of, some of it still sits there if you look really good. It's kind of hard to see, hard to find. And then later on, the CC, this is not a good picture, but see that CC camp with the arrow? Down here is the hotel, church, and store down there. They're kind of fuzzied out. We're going to point for these guys. There's the CC camp. This is the hotel, the church on the hill, and then the store right below it. So if you go past, don't take a left across the bridge. Keep going up Porter's Creek, and you'll come to the CC camp remains. There's a pavilion there for the CC camp. It used to be located.
Can you orient again?
Pardon?
You're on Porter's Creek Road.
Yes, Porter's Creek, thank you.
So,
That's Porter's Creek going up right here.
okay,
Ramsey Cascades would be this direction.
okay.
So that pavilion is where they have the Quaker reunion. And it's right there, basically across the road bed, it's good for the river, you'll find the CC camp remains. Part of the corner of one building is right there on the bridge. It's a good little hike. I plan on going back up there. Ed's going to Fleming's going to lead a hike up that way a little later on with the Hikers Club.
Did you go up Greenbrier Bridge to get to the CCC? It's right on the road?
The store set at Greenbrier Bridge Trailhead,
Okay.
and then if you go up on the hill, that's where the Friendship Church was, and the Whaley Cemetery sits up there off Greenbrier Bridge. Some people call it the church cemetery, but really the Whaley Cemetery. But you're going with the road and not the trail. It's a good question, I'm glad you asked.
The pavilion where the bathrooms are. That's where you have the reunion.
Yes.
Got it.
Glad you called the bathrooms, they're really just outhouses. It smells, and if they were close, you have a bathroom there. So now let's move out of Greenbrier and come into the Sugarlands. How am I doing on my time? What time is it? Time check?
143.
1:43. I got 15 minutes. I'll be fast. I'm going to skip on this next slide because it's a map. If you come out of Gatlinburg, here's Gatlinburg coming in, and then we'll turn up and go 441 all the way up to the chimneys and Newfound Gap, and we'll do on this side as well. Here's Gatlinburg. We'll come in and go up 441 all the way up to the chimney, the Allen Cave Trail, and 441. You've got Fighting Creek. This is actually Fighting Creek, but this is Ashhopper Creek. The Fighting Creek Road kind of parallels going up this way, going back to, everybody knows Laurel Falls, right? That's what Fighting Creek is, going up Laurel Falls. So let me come back just a moment to where I live. Wheel too much. This is the Joel Carr farm. This is his barn. And you're looking back up to Mount Cotton back down. That's 441. We run right up through here. That is where today's visitor center sits, right there where that barn is. That's what it looked like before the visitor center. Sugarlands Visitor Center. Probably should have clarified that. Should have Sugarlands Visitor Center. And then here's the map. This area is sort of the lower end. I'll give you a better picture later, but this is Sugarlands Valley, as they call it. And then you're going up and you get into the chimneys. And then this little area right here is Sugarland Branch. That's where my granddaughter was born. So let's start out with the very top up to where the chimneys are. Okay. A lot of you, most in this room are probably familiar with Newfound Gap and Newfound Gap Road. You go from Gatlinburg to Cherokee. Does that sound familiar? Going across the mountain, it's Newfound Gap. Before Newfound Gap Road was put in, there used to be an older way to get across the mountain. The original way was the way the Indian warrior path was, called Indian Gap. And it was really just a horse trail, walk-it horse trail, big game trail. You know. And so during the Civil War, General Thomas widened it and made it a wagon trail so they could have some move artillery and things across the mountain if they needed to. I don't know if they ever did it, but they widened it to go across there. And then later on, the Dicus Construction Company was contracted to build a road in 1928. The locals just call it the 28 Road. Most others today see a map that's the Dicus Construction, same road. But it went up to the chimneys, and you'll see in this picture, when we try to point, it's really hard to see. There's a bridge going across the river right there. This is the road coming up from the Sugarlands Visitor Center to the river. The bridge crosses, this is a big switchback, and it goes all the way up this way. Same thing over here, let me show you. Coming up from the Sugarlands Visitor Center, the bridge, switchback, and going on up to the chimneys. I mean, past the chimneys up to Defend Gap, Island Cave, parking lot, and so forth. Well, the Cole family lived in literally where Chimney's picnic area is today. Their farm was kind of the upper end of the picnic area. And I've tried to work in here. That's actually the brackets I have, but if you'll look really close, you might see some barns and things. But I'll get you a picture. Just right now, we're going to talk about John Pinckney Cole, first of the Coles to come in. His son, Bill Cole, we'll talk about a little later. His son, Steve, we'll address later. Mary J. Cole, she's the mother of Alex, and then Joseph was a brother also to Bill. So these are the children of the original Cole community. So this is Bill Cole, and if you look at his barn, you see the chimneys up there right behind the barn, the old mountain, and if you look at his home, you can, to the left, you can see one corner of the chimneys. Well, Joseph and Bill kind of had their farms up in there, and they called, most people just nicknamed it the Goober Farm. The Goober Farm. Do y'all remember that little song, Eating Goober Peas? Goodness, how delicious eating Goober Peas. Well, they raised peanuts up there. Okay, it's a peanut farm. And so they just nicknamed it the Goober Farm. Well, Steve Cole, which is Bill's son, he marries a gentleman we met a little earlier. Remember the postmaster of Gatlinburg, Richard Reagan? He fought in the Civil War with the Union in Calvary. He built this house, and Steve marries his daughter. I can't pronounce her name, Sharitza or something. We just always call her Kay. Okay, it's easier to say. But this is Kay and Steve here with their first few children. The little girl in the middle of them, you can see behind us, her name is Trula. She married my grandfather's brother. So we keep tying into all these families, right? So Richard sold this house to his daughter and son-in-law, and then the last time I was here, one of the ladies in the audience says, "Are those bee gums?" Yeah, they are. That's he raised bees, and his home was right on the Dykes Road. He had a lot of travelers stop in to see him. So now we're looking down the chimneys where the road swung around. I got a picture of the Indian Gap Hotel kind of blown up there. Well, it sets, you can see the top of it right down here. Excuse me, right there. That's the top of it. And here's coming up to the Sugarlands Visitor Center, coming up to the Sugarlands Visitor Center, and there's the Indian Gap Hotel. You can hike down to those ruins still today. The reason I'm showing you this is because the Brackens, when they came in, remember they came in to avoid the Civil War. Well, Andrew Jackson Bracken was the first to come in with his family. He was married to a lady named Demarius Hamlin. And sometimes those of us who see this picture kind of laugh a little bit because she looks like she's mad at the world, you know. But the truth is, back in photography in those days, you had to wait, and you had to wait, and you had to wait until the image built, okay, with that old shadow box that they used. And so by the time you got your picture to come through, the smile had long left, okay, it was way down, so she doesn't look too happy there. But that's her daughter, Julia Bracken. Remember Julia was washing clothes and beating the paddle and pointing the guy, that's her daughter. And then her brother, Davis Bracken, is right beside her. There's some interesting stories about Davis that articles were written. Was it the Knoxville Sentinel that wrote the story about the shooting? Is that the paper? Frank, do you remember which paper?
Well, he was also in our Southern Highlanders.
Oh, that's true. He's in that book too.
Jasper Fenn in our Southern Highlanders.
Yeah, they used a fake name so they wouldn't give him away in that. But anyway, so that's of course Kephardt's book, Our Southern Highlanders. Great reading if you've never read that. But Davis Bracken, again, the brother and the son of Andrew Jackson and the three of Julia. Well, to kind of tie it in here a little bit, Pinckney, who is Bullhead's son, Bullhead's over to the left, he marries Julia Bracken while they lived in the Sugarlands. Here's a picture of Davis Bracken again. He marries a Cole. His wife's name was Josephine Cole in his photo. And she sat to Davis's left with all of their children. Cicero's in that picture. Riley Davis is in that picture. Some of the Brackens moved down to Bradley County that we kind of raised around their children. We used to play with them when I was a kid. But here's another picture of the two different shots of the Indian Gap Hotel.
Yeah.
And so I'm showing you in the foreground of the top picture, see this cabin right here? That's Davis Bracken's cabin that he built. And then across from the Indian Gap Hotel, you can't hardly see it, but he built a house over here later. But his son Andy later on lived in the cabin. Both of those you can hike down to if you got good legs and you go down a steep hill.
Is his cabin the one that has the graves by it?
Davis, which cabin? Because he had two.
The one by the Indian Gap Hotel, the one that was pictured.
I'm not aware of any graves there. Frank, are you aware of graves? We need to go back and douse that if there's some graves there. don't we?
I'm aware of the house, but not the grave.
Okay, I'm not aware of the graves either.
Yeah, in one of the books it says there's 4 graves there.
Okay.
Don't believe everything you read.
We've done a lot of wild goose chases, honey.
We searched in the wrong place, I think.
I'd like to know, it would be interesting to go back and try to find it. Frank's good at finding the graves, they can be found, he's good at it. With Davis, he had actually had a cabin before this one, that was his second cabin. I'm not even sure where that, you know where his first cabin
The
was?
chimney remains is that cabin, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. And it's supposed to be so many feet from that chimney.
Oh, okay, well, I'll go back and check that out.
I don't-
But we know Davis's place is up next to the road,
His first one.
well, where he lived most of his life.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about the third house, yeah.
Up near the road.
Yes.
And
And that was made out of solid wood, that
that
was
had a nice big rock
big rock wall.
that those kids used to play on.
Yep.
Well, it's like a stone.
Yeah, stone wall.
They call it their whale rocks.
Yeah.
This is a photo, this picture here it's got a Fox, I can't remember his first name, but he drew up this map of what I call the Sugarland Valley. The reason I'm showing you this, we've moved down from the chimneys and where the Coles and Brackers live, but their children moved down into this Sugarland Valley. And in Sugarland Valley, you had some interesting things there. To the left is called the Teacher's Cottage. Pi Beta Phi brought some teachers up into the area to
My
teach.
grandma's sister, she taught there.
Oh, wow.
And then she married a husky.
She married Charles Husky,
Charles
didn't she?
Husky.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause he helped build that and ended up getting a wife out of the deal.
Charles used to do, he really took a lot of those old pictures you see in these books.
He did. Charles Husky had a library in his house. I'd love to know what happened to that.
Yeah. And his, I'm trying to think, but I don't know who wound up with the pictures. Jerry McCarter told me that he had saw them and it was unreal. And like I say, a lot of them in the books, the collection she had, he tried to get them to give it to somebody that would save all of them.
Yes.
And,
He only had one daughter and she lived in Florida. She was a
she
school
owned all
teacher.
that and had a Cartertown back from her from the church. And
Yeah.
she called me and wanted me to go over and check on this and check on that. And there's supposed to be an Indian cemetery on that place.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But just to look at this map, this is the present day 441 going up to Van Gap. If you park where you can hike up to Husky Gap, there's a trail that's really a road bed that will bring you down, from the parking lot. And there's for the old store, Ernest Ogle, he had him and his wife Lucinda. Lucinda, if you've ever, remember we talked about Wiley Oakley, Lucinda was his daughter. So the Rolling Man and the Smokies, his little books are out there, the red books. You ought to get one of those. They're very colorful reads. But that's his daughter that had, again, here we brought the old store out into the Sugarlands. And then, not to be outdone, the Skyuka Inn. I don't know where Skyuka came from, but Sam Husky built that. And his daughter, I think her name Hazel, his daughter's name is Hazel, she married Reagan, Jim Reagan. So here the Reagans are bringing the store out as well. They had a store in their home. And then Alex, remember Alex Cole? He ends up close by. Let me get to the picture of it. You can see it a whole lot better. But that photo to the upper right is the Skyuka Inn, and Alex Cole's home's right below it. So let's take a kind of a look. Close up first at the teacher's cottage. Bert Noble lived, it had a big farm in the Sugarland Valley. As you go down that road bed. And right across the river, he also owned land on the east side of the river as well. And he donated the land for the school, and Teacher's Cottage, and then also a cemetery. A lot of people know the Sugarlands Cemetery, but it was first called the Burt Cemetery with the locals. By the way, none of that's there today. All you find is the cemetery today, none of those structures. This is my track log. When I came in, you know, when you leave the Sugarlands Visitor Center, can y'all see my mouse pointer up there, both sides?
Yeah.
Okay. If you leave the Sugarlands Visitor Center here and cross the bridge, first bridge going into Gatlinburg, pull off a little parking lot, and get on this trail, and you can walk it all the way up to the CC camp remains. Keep on walking, you can come up and we cut off to go to the cemetery as well. I don't have my mouse pointer doing it, I can't see it. But you'll get up to where you go over to the cemetery. If you go down toward the river, you can find some of the remains for the schoolhouse. You can't find any of the remains for the Teacher's Cottage that I heard.
My Uncle Kelly McCarter, he lived right where you went up Sugarland Branch. His mama was a toll. But he said when he was 13 years old, he delivered the newspaper up there.
Wow. I wonder what
And he said he would go up to the teacher's cottage, and they'd always be sitting on the porch on Sunday morning waiting for the paper. And he said he'd go by the CC camp, and he said the guys never had no money, and they'd steal stuff out of the kitchen, and they'd trade it to him for a newspaper. And he would, that's why his mama got most of the groceries.
Industrious woman, that's pretty good. There was actually a little footbridge just below the Teacher's Cottage where you cross the river to go from Bert Owen's place, and you could go up to the Teacher's Cottage.
Where he lived is right where Sugarland Branch crosses the road right on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
But I had a map, and it showed his home place on the other side, and me and Ed and Charles Hurst were coming, and I had him to help me find it. Kelly described it to me, you know, it's a big rock in the yard, and just right where it was at, and it was just like he said. Ed doused it.
It's kind of thrilling when you can find that, isn't it? I mean, I've been on some of
But
those.
the map was wrong. It showed it on the other side of the creek.
Imagine that.
And I showed him the map. He was in his 90s before he died. And he said, no, that's not where I live. He said, it's just right across from there.
And the road's really high right there where the bridge comes down to. The reason I'm bringing this one back up is this valley, and this is where you were talking about the Sugarland Branch community. This is Sugarland Branch flowing down to 441, but a lot of people live, this is where Joel Whaley had most of his property. And the Husky Gap Trail, you can get to it by way of Husky Gap Trail. So here's that Sugarland Valley, as I'm calling it, and that's the Dykus Road. If you look way down here, you'll see the Skyuka, you know, see that there's a bridge that crosses the river, right where the Skyuka Hotel was. Then as you come around, this is Bert Noble's farm right here, his house and barn. And then the Teacher's Cottage is across the river right over here. And then the store that Ernest Stowe, he was the grandson of Bert Noble. His store's there right there, but you can't see the store. If you come on out, the Coal-Union Cemetery sits here. And the Coal-Union Cemetery is where you have the Confederate and the Union soldiers both buried in the same graveyard. And here's a picture of Ernest Ogle on the store. And that's the front of the store right there. Here's a close-up of the Skyuka Inn. All you can find today is where the fireplace was. That's about all you can find back in the woods. Picture of Sam Husky who built it. And remember we talked about Alex Cole. This is his house right here. Remember he's the grandson of the original Cole to come in. They moved his home up on the Roaring Fork Trail. If you do that Motor Lodge Trail, his cabin had been moved up there. You can still see it today. Now, to show you this photo, the yellow line is the present day 441. The blue line is the Dykus Road that kind of came back around. But when it joined up to the modern day road, it's a real sharp hairpin curve and it becomes the same road again. This little dotted line trail is a little sled road trail that'll take you back into the Sugarland Branch community. That's where my grandmother was born. And she born in there that most people know as the Rock Garden. Remember the question, John Bullhead Whaley, and people always ask me, which came first? Was Bullhead named after the mountain, or was the mountain named after Bullhead? Kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, if you'll see this artist rendering, most of the old timers thought Mount LeConte looked like the back of a bull, and then the mountain right below it looked like a bull's head. And when you're up on Anakeeston, you can see off so good from way up there on top of the mountain. If you look back with the sun hitting it, man, you can see that it's just like a bull lake in there. It really does. So Bullhead, remember, got all these John Whaleys. These John Whaley in Greenbrier when he comes and buys land from his brother-in-law and moves to the base of Bullhead Mountain, he gets a new name. Now you're Bullhead John Whaley, so we can figure you out from the rest. So the mountain was first, to answer the question. So here he is, Bullhead John Whaley. He even has a bullhead look to him, doesn't he? And then his son, Pinckney. Pinckney's the brother of Joel. So we talked about Pinckney and Greenbrier. Joel stayed in the Sugarlands area. Oh, there's my alarm for my wife telling me to shut up. Let me finish up real quick. Joel kind of settled in to the Sugarlands ranch area. He bought a lot of land for the Huskies and owned a big farm up there. He was also kind of a squire, justice of the peace. He owned a lot of wagons and farms, and so the people in the area would get their crops. Let Joel take them down to Sevierville and sell them in his wagons. And then Joel, being the entrepreneur that he was, he would send the wagons back home to some of his workers. He'd stay in Sevierville an extra day on Monday because they did the farmer's market on Saturday and Sunday. And he'd hang around in the courthouse along in the yard area, and if they couldn't find enough men to do jury duty, they'd go outside and say, hey, you want to be on jury duty? You pay $1.25 a day, so that's big money. So Joel just made him some extra money before he came back home, and he was hoping to pick for the jury duty. Now here's one of your Huskies, and this Husky married a noble. This is James Wesley Husky, and he's a grandson to old Isaac. He was the father of Peggy Husky, which is my grandmother's grandmother, and then married Joel Whaley. So here we have old Isaac, we have his grandson, James Wesley. James Wesley just built cabins all over the place. He lived everywhere. He lived up above Elkmont before it was Elkmont in the Little River community. He lived up on Meggs Mountain. He was lived all over. And so Martha Jane Husky Ogle, he's her great-grandnephew, and then this is her great-granddaughter that he married. I'm trying to see her name, I forgot what her name is. Anyway, if you look on down, you've got these three that are the children of James Wesley. Well, this is my grandmother's grandmother, and her two brothers, Isaac, Bradley, and Aaron. The reason I'm showing you Aaron is we've got a picture here, Charles Husky. We talked about Charles, had all the pictures in his home. This is my grandfather, my uncle. They were good friends. My grandfather, Charles Husky, were contemporaries of each other. They both worked for the railroad at the same time a little bit. And they did their memoirs and a lot of their research together on their family history. And another gentleman, my picture here was Sam Carter that did also work for them.
Charles would be my great uncle. He was married to my grandma's sister.
Yeah, Charles, this is him right here as a little boy in the lap of his daddy Aaron. So, again, this is my grandmother's parents. This is William Parton, and this is Labisha, her parents. And then that's my grandmother's little baby on the lap. And kind of a little interesting tale. I'll try to be quick. But here's William Parton down here. When he came in as a little 15-year-old young man, his mother remarried after her father got killed in the Civil War, lost Elisha Wilbur Parton. He died actually in the Andersonville prison camps down in Georgia. Died of cholera. He's in one of those mass graves down there. But with his mother remarried, he's a little, I guess, put loose and fancy free, wanted to get away from home, maybe didn't like his stepdad, I don't know. But then Caroline was a first cousin to Joel, and Joel had become a successful businessman farmer up in the Sugarlands branch here, so she brought her son over to see if Joel could do anything with him, so they put him to work as a lieutenant farmer, and that's where he met and married Elisha. Caroline's mother was Martha Whaley. She was the sister to Bullhead, so they Joel and Caroline were first cousins. So here's the Parton family, not all of them, just a few. This is the first 9 of the Parton children, all of them raised in this little bitty log cabin. This is Joel's barn. They called it a turnaround barn because you could pull a wagon in the loft and unload your hay. And then I kind of tried to do a little hand drawing and showing this rock garden. My grandparents, her family, they built this garden these rocks around the garden, rock wall, to keep the hogs and the cows out of the garden. And then here we have Joel, one of the last pictures with 3 of his brothers sitting on the front porch of his house at the Sugarlands branch. But just to close out, I'll end with this. Remember we talked about Alex Cole and then William Labisha's children? Well, their son Fred, who's the oldest, and then the third son, Hugh, they married Alex Cole's daughters, Cora Cole and Mag Cole. Have any of you ever eaten at or know about the Parton Deli? Does that ring a bell? The Parton Deli is you're going down, just past the end of the golf and so forth. It's where the famous car is. Remember the car that's kind of exploded on the internet, YouTube? Okay, that's Fred's grandson, David. And then Dennis and his dad, Henry, started the Parton Deli in 1974. Well, that's their claim to fame. Hubert's daughter, Hubert Magco's daughter, was Pauline, and they had a son named Rex. When they had the Greyhound bus station in Gatlinburg the other day, they had a lunch counter. Rex used to run the lunch counter. Later on, he opened Omar's restaurant down in Parkway. And then Pauline, she married a gentleman named Tommy Hughes. They had Tommy's Restaurant, if you ever remember from the 60s, 70s, Tommy's Restaurant right in the heart of Gatlinburg. So that's their claim to fame as well. So folks, that ends my little talk here about family, places, clans, communities. I've got photos up here. If anybody just wants a souvenir photo, I would just like to be in reimbursement. I'll give it to you at my cost. But I've also got some books on the families that play these departments, the Orbeez. I'm not trying to push these. I just brought them in case somebody wanted some. And all I do, I don't try to profit off history. I just try to get back where I got in. Basically, so you're welcome to come up here and look. Thank you very much for your attention.